Influence in photography and why your photography matters on this episode of Develop and Process. I'm Justin Lowry, and this channel is all about helping you level up your landscape photography by thinking bigger, diving deeper, and asking the right questions. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. On today's episode, we're going to talk about influence in photography and why your photography matters. And this is a topic that keeps coming up in the comments and also just in various discussions, that I read, various books. And it really matters a lot to me. I think it matters possibly more than anything else in photography, is this idea of having a positive, lasting influence through your photography work. And I just think we need a dose of perspective, because a lot of times we get caught up in social media and we feel like we're drowning in just a relentless deluge of content 24/7, 365 on all different social media platforms. And it's tempting to say, who am I? How could I ever possibly matter? Do I have a voice? Does any of my stuff ever get heard? And why should I even bother trying when everything is just forgotten in an hour? And I think we need a serious dose of perspective. So let's take a trip back through time. If you look back at some of the most influential creatives of all time, I think back to some of the Greek philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, Plato, Aristotle. I think of, the writer Homer. All of these writers are some of the most influential, Greek writers of their times. Today, in 2018, when they were writing with a scroll and a quill, and whether or not your work got seen was dependent on things like social status, wealth, political standing, geographic location, and so on. Another really powerful example for me, I think is, if you think of the writers of the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, and you think of, say, the Apostle Paul, when he's writing the epistles, he's dictating that to a scribe or a professional writer who's writing it out with a quill on a scroll as he's speaking it. And then when they finish, they take the scroll and they roll it up and they hand it to a guy, and the messenger guy has to run 300 miles overland, and sometimes take boats and go on perilous ocean journeys on sailing ships, and then get to a distant, far-off city, physically hand the rolled-up scroll to a bishop or a church leader, who has to then read that scroll to the congregation out loud, who has to come in person and sit down and listen to him read it in a building. And you contrast that with today, where we have the ability to tap out a blog post with our thumbs on an iPhone while waiting in line at Starbucks, hit publish, and have 1 million people have it, read it, or billions of people have access to it instantly in a split second for free with zero cost or effort. And we complain about not having influence, not having reach. It just blows my mind. Furthermore, in the Western world, we have this immense freedom of speech and freedom to travel and freedom to pursue our dreams and happiness. And the stuff that we write is like, even if it's really inflammatory, we're very unlikely to get in trouble for it. Nothing's going to happen. We're going to get a mean comment on YouTube or on our blog or Facebook, and we get all bummed out and depressed over it. It's like in the first century, when people were writing things, dealing with the Roman Empire and oppressive regimes and crazy psychotic emperors who were, burning people at the stake, feeding people to lions, crucifying people by the thousands, and then confiscating their literature and burning it because it conflicted with the ideals of the Roman Empire. And it's like, but someone might leave a mean comment on my YouTube video, so I don't feel like I want to go and make a YouTube video. Or, you know, I don't want to write a blog post because I'm afraid that someone's going to say something mean in the comments. I just think we need a reality check. Like, we are living in the greatest moment in all of human history, in the entire universe, to have influence. And yet so many of us are so tempted to just discount that and say, well, because so many people have influence, my influence doesn't matter. And I just don't think that checks out. I think if you have a message that's worth sharing, people are going to see it, people are going to listen, and it's going to affect them. Also, I want to think, about artists. You look at Leonardo da Vinci or Vincent van Gogh or Picasso, and these artists in their time, whether or not your art was seen was dependent upon patrons and wealthy, landowners and aristocrats to finance your work and to put it on display on their estates and things like that. You didn't have the luxury of things like Flickr and Instagram to just, boom, share your artwork with the world in an instant, split second from your iPhone. Yet they continued to create, they continued to produce in an environment where they had all the cards stacked against them, and they still made work that today is appreciated all over the world by billions of people. And then let's fast forward a little bit and we look at the history of photography. Ansel Adams, obviously, founder of landscape photography as we know it today. He, struggled, everything, obviously he shot large format, everything he did was manual, mechanical, darkroom, chemicals. There was no Photoshop, there was no Lightroom, there was everything had to be done by hand. And then after all of that expense and labor and work, he was limited by who would finance the work. He did work for Standard Oil. The guy was an environmental conservationist. You think he liked working for somebody like that? But it paid the bills, and he had to pay the bills to feed his family. You look at Elliot Porter. He was one of the first great color nature photographers, and he had to work with color film to express his work. Well, they didn't even have color chemicals that were suitable for getting accurate colors with the films he was using. So he had to formulate his own developer recipes and chemicals in order to physically make his work possible. And yeah, we get discouraged because we think Photoshop is hard. I just think we really need a sense of perspective when we look at the history of art and the history of photography, the history of creative work. And we need to think about how far we've come and that we live in this incredible golden moment of opportunity to have influence. And I also think we need to remember that creative work that expresses the core feelings, values of the human spirit can transcend time and place and really matter. There's great artworks that just stand the test of time and have lasted thousands of years. And I still truly believe that if you really pour your soul into your work, and if you really believe in what you're doing, if you're true to yourself, if you have a vision, if you have a message that's worth sharing, and that you express that message through your creative work, through your photography, that photography can change lives. And maybe that's not photography, maybe it's video, maybe it's writing. The creative work can change lives and influence people for good. And for me, in my own work, I call my magazine Salt and Light. I want my work and I want myself, the vision I have, to be salt of the earth, and I want it to be a light of positive influence. And that's the point. It's not about, I took a better photo that's higher resolution with a fancy camera that's weird. That's got nothing to do with it. It's that I'm trying to show people that life can be lived better and on a higher level and a deeper level, and that you can transcend this everyday grind of just paying the bills and just looking for your next meal, and that you can get out there and you can live life, and you can live a life that's inspiring and meaningful and fulfilling and life-changing, and that influences other people for good, and that makes people realize that life is just so wonderful and amazing, and just how blessed we are to have the opportunities that we have. And when you take advantage of those opportunities to do creative work and to inspire people and to influence people, you make the world a better place. And that's what this channel is about. That's what all this work is about. It's got nothing to do with megapixels and sensors and scanners and film stocks. I could care less about that stuff. That stuff is a means to an end of creating meaningful, creative work for fellow human beings that expresses what it means to be alive. That's what this is about. And I really hope that we can really focus on that and see the potential and transcend the gear and the techniques and realize just what's possible with our photography. I want to share with you some of the people that have influenced me lately in meaningful ways. And even if YouTube, even if the internet were to collapse tomorrow, the influence that these people had is going to stick with me for the rest of my life. And the influence that you have is going to stick with the people you reach for the rest of their lives. Whether or not your physical photographs or your digital files last, the influence you had on other people lasts. It sticks with them. The influence you had on them, they're going to look back on your work, on the influence you had, and it's going to help them through their life. If you were true to yourself, if you had a positive influence and a positive message, that influence is going to stick and it's going to last regardless of technology, regardless of the medium. It's going to transcend that. You know, here's some YouTube channels that lately have just been inspiring to me, and I want to share them with you as little examples of how people out there are influencing me and influencing other people through their creative work on the internet using the tools that we have available today. So let's look at a few. The first one, let's look at Kim Grant.
So I never thought that it was possible to fall in love with Scotland any more than I already am until I came here. Just look at this.
A dream has just come true for me right now.
Yes, there's hay bales.
If you want to be good at something, you've got to put in the time, the effort in order to succeed.
It's like
A winter wonderland today.
you just feel so alive here.
When it comes to landscape photography, you really need to have hope. And when the weather conditions are this bad, oh my goodness, when your tent's almost blowing away.
So Kim Grant is a landscape photographer, and she is from Scotland, and her passion is for the wild lands of Scotland and the hill country and the coastal areas. The thing about her channel is the positivity. It's the positive spirit. It's the attitude. It's the sheer joy of like frolicking through a meadow and just like laughing and crying because of the sheer beauty of the experience. You know, that positivity reminds me of just how blessed we are to be able to go out and do the things that we do. I mean, not everyone can go out in the wilderness on a photography trip. Not everyone can afford a camera. Not everyone can afford to travel. Not everyone lives in a country where they can travel. The sheer joy and gratitude of the freedom and the appreciation for nature and just the positivity on Kim's channel, I think, is what inspires me. And so I wanted to share her channel with you. Another channel that's really inspired me is Nick Mayo, Nick Exposed. I've mentioned him before. He inspired me because he started a YouTube channel where they have weekly conversations about deeper issues in photography, things that make us tick. And I really think that we need more of that.
I just kind of want to wrestle through something with you guys and just share something that I was going through. This whole idea of comparing ourselves to others and comparing our work to others, I started to fall into that place and started to compare my own work to Ralph Gibson's and Kit Young's and just going through this Flickr account of Kit's and just seeing so much of his previous work and so much of the stuff that I wish I had in my own portfolio. I just got into this place of I like to say it in the lightest way. I was essentially ready to just hang up the Leica and just give up on photography altogether and just become a spectator of everything, if that makes sense.
And he did such a great job of it. It really inspired me to try and start a channel of my own from the angle that I have, which is totally different from his. He's a street photographer, shoots 35mm. I'm a landscape photographer, shoot large format. We do totally different genres of work, have different perspectives, but we have a lot of the same ideas and values. And I really think that there's so much opportunity for more creators to get out there and produce content. And I think Nick really inspired me to realize that my message was worth sharing. So I want to thank Nick and share his channel with you. Another channel that's really inspired me is Expedition Overland.
When was the last time you realized the best thing in your life was sitting right next to you? When was the last time you experienced something so significant that it changed who you are? When was the last time you prepared to immerse yourself into the unknown?
Now, landscape photography overlaps tremendously with hiking, canyoneering, adventure stuff, and also overlanding, which is vehicle-based expedition travel. It's the idea of taking your vehicle and using it to reach wilderness areas that are very remote, and then using the vehicle as a rolling base camp to supply you with all your needs through that trip. So, like, my Forerunner serves that role. Well, the thing about Expedition Overland, again, is not just their beautiful cinematography and videography, their beautiful editing, their beautiful camera angles and drone shots and all of that stuff, of their truly inspiring expeditions to Central America, Alaska, Yukon, you know, and all of these crazy places they go. The inspiring thing about their channel is the conversations they have and the experiences they share with each other. How every time they go out in these places, they realize that life is so much better than many of us realize, that it can be so much more than just sitting behind a desk staring into a computer screen and then coming home and watching TV until you fall asleep. That life can just be lived on another level. And then when they go out in these wilderness places, they realize that, and they experience that together, and then they come home and they transform their lives to be better oriented toward those big experiences, those big travels, those inspiring things that are going to influence people and each other. So Expedition Overland, tremendously inspiring channel for me. Also 4X Overland, I'll link that as well. He's another guy, amazing guy. He goes out on solo expeditions across the Kalahari Desert in Africa, across the Australian outback, and he just does amazing things.
My name is Andrew St. Pierre White.
The program's called Take a Deep Breath. You can't help but take a deep breath up here.
And that is what the 6-part adventure travel series is all about. Taking the viewer to some of the most awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping places in southern Africa. And not just any place. Places so remote, so untouched, that the only means of getting there is by all-terrain vehicle.
And again, he helped me see what was truly possible with solo vehicle-based overland travel. And he's just been incredibly inspiring to me, so I want to share his channel with all of you as well. Another channel which arguably might be the most inspiring channel on this list is actually Ben Horne, and I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with him.
Every year since 2009, I've made the same drive through the Mojave Desert. But my destination and the road itself haven't changed. The experience of that drive is ever evolving. I've seen buildings fall into ruin along the highway and others spring up from the barren desert floor. In this day and age when photographers become world travelers and visit exotic locations, it might seem strange to visit the same place year after year, but I find comfort in that. Visiting Zion is like visiting a friend, catching up, hearing stories about the old days, and seeing how we both have changed.
But Ben Horne is a large format landscape photographer who goes out on solo expeditions in Utah, and he goes to Zion, Escalante, he goes to Death Valley, and he's been doing this for I think around 9 years now. And I started following his videos quite a long time ago, years ago. And his early expeditions where he would go out backpacking with 90 pounds of gear, lugging a 13-pound camera or something like that into the wilderness with only like 4 film holders of 8x10 film. And he would come home with all these breathtakingly gorgeous images. That was when I was shooting digital, and he made me realize that you can, in fact, buck the status quo, walk away from the rat race of gear one-upsmanship, and use a wooden camera in the 21st century to make truly remarkable images, and just have a better wilderness experience by using simpler tools and become a better photographer through it. And I think his channel has just been really inspiring to me in doing my own thing, transcending the sort of status quo of photography and doing things differently, even though sometimes that may be harder, but it's more rewarding and it's worthwhile. So Ben Horne's channel, absolutely check him out if you haven't already. I'm Justin Lowry. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay curious.